Hi, I'm Radical Coder. This is Umbreon. And real quick, before we dive in, if you want to make sure this little dude stays fed and warm, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments what I got right, what I got wrong, or what you want to argue about. Let's go.
Things. Hey, Radical Coder, how you doing, man?
What's up, buddy? Doing well. How are
Hey,
you?
good, good. Do you want to do video? Or are you okay with just doing audio while I code? I don't have
Uh,
a preference either way. It's completely up to you, man.
I don't mind. I got to show off the puppy. I'm sure people like to see the little dog.
Sure. All right. Okay, give me 1 second then, because I gotta
Sorry to
put
give
you
you
on.
extra work.
Yeah, I gotta put in the crap. Uh, what the hell, Discord? I can see you. Why can't I make you? I want to pop you out. There we go. Man, Discord makes this so difficult. Okay, so I'm gonna put Radical Coder up. Hopefully, there. That should work. That should be good. Okay, there's Radical
Okay.
Coder. That's with his puppy. What's your puppy's name, by the way?
This is Umbreon.
Umbreon? Nice.
Yeah, like the Pokemon. Yeah.
Nice. Not like the Pokemon. You literally named it. Son of a
Yeah, I'm
bitch.
a big Pokemon fan.
Now,
He
so
evolved from an Eevee.
yeah, okay. All right.
You know.
Can now that there's it's so many jokes that you could make with your dog while you're like I don't know, whatever. How you
Okay.
doing, man?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Good.
I just tuned in. I saw you were taking call-ins. I thought it'd be a good opportunity to come in and chat a little bit.
Sure, yeah,
Uh,
whatever you want.
sure. I guess one of the things I heard you say that I thought was interesting, and I might agree with you, just depending on the framing of it.
Sure.
Um, the laws of logic being like all you need for coding or whatever. Like, or maybe I'm being reductive to what you said. Do you want to reiterate?
Um, does it reduce down to purely the laws of logic? Yeah, I would say that it does. It reduces down to purely the laws of logic. I'll stand by that statement. Yeah.
Okay. I would agree in a sense. Like I feel like I only recently like learned the like formally the laws of logic, and I've been coding for like got like 14 years now, I guess.
Yeah.
But I only like just formally like went through and learned like, oh, what are these like literal like the three laws of logic. I just never really used them, I like explicitly. But what I realized as I was learning them is that I've always been using them, like it's the only way to think clearly is to use the laws of logic. Like if you do basic math, you are using the laws of logic because they're just kind of like matter of fact. Like they're more like claims of like the limits of intuition. Um,
Right. Right. Yeah, I think that would be the argument um that stems kind of the arguments you've probably seen Andrew make on other types of debates, not necessarily the ones that like you and I might have hypothetically. I'm not saying that we are. I'm just saying in a hypothetical world, you and I might focus more on like, more like nitty-gritty programming hardcore stuff. But from Andrew's worldview, he would start at that point where he would ask something like, well, what gives you that? Like how do you actually exist with that intuition from
mhm.
the get-go, right? And he'd point to that as like, well, there's something fundamental to human beings, that all human beings behave this way, that when you if you are willing to be reductive, it reduces down to the laws of logic, and everybody kind of obeys that by nature. So where does that come from? And then you can kind of see where that leads to. I think you're the last person I have to
Yeah,
explain it to.
yeah, no. I think instead of like I agree Andrew would frame it that way. Hang on, Brandon's crying. I agree Andrew would frame it that way. I think my disagreement with him on that comes from like it's not that we obey the laws of logic. It's that I mean, what else? We don't have a choice. Like there's no other like I mean, what is it? What would it mean for the law of identity to not be true? Like what would it mean for like almost the question itself is absurd.
Yeah.
Like for something to be true and not true at the same time is just it breaks the edges of human comprehension, and like whether or not whatever the reason that is, is up for discussion, I suppose, but it doesn't like necessitate some external force. It just is like well, it's like it's more observational than it is like it doesn't tell you anything external to that. Like if someone presented me like some idea of like, you know, this is what it would mean to like if they could resolve the contradiction between something being true and false, then I'd be open to that information. But like obviously that's a kind of absurd concept.
Okay, let me non-debate style, because I have a similar and yet so I'm not orthodox. I'm not in a religion or whatever. I'm just I believe that God exists, and I believe that there's a fundamental nature yet. So that's where I'm coming from. So not in a non-debate style. Let me throw something at you then. What would you think?
Sure.
Okay, how about this question? Do you think it would even be possible for someone to come up with a legitimate argument why the law of identity would be false that you would believe? Is it even within the realm of possibility?
Um, I can't imagine it. Like I'm incredulous to the idea. Like I think is the way I'd put. Like I'm hyper skeptical of it because the idea seems so absurd to me. But like I mean I'm open to hearing it. Like I would want to hear if somebody had that argument. I would be stoked to hear it because
Yeah.
that would I mean it's a fascinating idea, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree that it's so beyond. There's plausible, there's possible, and then anything beyond possible is simply not imaginable. That's what I would take it to be. And if that's true, then it means that I cannot I could not foresee any future where somebody has an argument against the laws of logic, because it would just mean that the entire fundamental structure of nature is just like we're not living in the same universe anymore at all. Nothing, you can't even make sense of not making sense of something. It's beyond,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like multi-layered beyond sense. So
Like what
then,
would it even mean, right? Like
yeah,
what system are you going to use to break down the laws of logic, like to argue or to contradict them? Like with just even that question is we're using logical frameworks,
that's
like we're
right.
using the laws of logic to we're asking about a contradiction, which is like that
Yeah.
this is inherent to the laws of logic. We are asking, can you present a law of logic that is not consistent with the laws of logic? It's like, well,
Yeah.
not really, I guess. You
Yeah.
know.
It's the most non-logical way. It's so anti-logical. It's weirdly diametrically opposed. Yeah, I agree. I agree. So I would point to that and say, well, why are the laws of logic inherent to nature? I wonder what you think of that.
I guess I mean I would go back to what I'm saying, like the same thing. It's like I don't know that they're I don't know about the why. I I know that there. I just know that I can't conceptualize a world like I can't conceptualize any other sort of system for rationalization. Like it just doesn't compute. You know.
Okay. So if you then understand that, would you consider yourself to be a rational being, employing logic to come to that conclusion?
To the best of my ability, you know, like
Yeah.
I know that I'm like human and fallible and all this stuff. Like I don't think I've got a perfectly rational system in my brain that is always gonna observe the laws of logic. Like, because even like I think as we have conversations about things, we're loading in a bunch of different like feelings into our language that are if we unpack each one at every step, then we can find like weird contradictions at weird corners, and it doesn't and sometimes that's really like fun to do and but a lot of times it kind of just turns into like word games, right? What's this I'm not a really big philosophy guy, but I think it's like the Wittgenstein stuff, like
Yeah.
word games and all that meme.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I'll just state, like, I think it would be at this point that we might possibly deviate on the idea of like a creator, which I wouldn't bundle in the Christian aspect of it. That's not my personal take on it, because I come from a Christian background, but I was in a cult, and I have left, and I don't want to associate myself with that right now. So
Sure.
the way that I see it is that if I am therefore a rational being and you're a rational being, and we think hopefully as rationally as we can, even though we're imperfect, etc., then it would make sense to me that there's like some kind of entailment or necessity then, where the fact that the laws of logic exist and that I can employ them means that something outside of myself must also have the laws of logic and employs them. Because the reason why I look at it that way is because if you look at the reason why I bring this up is it goes down to the code. When you look at code executed on a machine, that's really all it operates on. So the hardware turns your code into whatever the binary and stuff is, and then the electrical signals are on and off, and so there you have all the laws of logic right there. Something is itself or it isn't. Something is on or it's not. It can't be into blah blah blah, right? But you don't look at the machine and go, it created the laws of logic within itself. There is never, you can never point to anything in the universe that simply just had the laws of logic without some external force applying it. So think about it this way. This is another way to think that I've thought about it is if you walk into a murder scene and someone has unfortunately lost their lives and there's a pool of, blood around them or whatever, and then you see a weaponry. I'm trying to be super terms of service, like trying not to trigger anybody. So there's weaponry there. You don't point to the weapon and go, well, the weapon generated in here, and that's what killed this person. There's always an external factor. The thing was brought into the room, and you're looking at the scene as such, like something external happened. This didn't just happen. And if you can engage with that within the system, then you have to assume that there's something outside of the system that at least has some force on the system. Does that make any sense at all?
It does make sense, but I think the place it breaks down, like in that scenario, like the reason that I think, oh, it didn't, like this knife didn't just manifest in this room is because I have a bunch of priors that tell me that knives don't just don't just appear in rooms. Mm-hmm. But I don't have that for like the existence of the universe. I don't really have any. I don't have any intuitions about like what was or if there ever was like whether the universe always existed or whether it came into existence at a certain time. Like I know there's a lot of physics that I just don't have the language to really I don't have the language or education to like really dive deep into that. But I think there's debate about whether or not like the universe has kind of always been there, or if there's what it even means for the universe to always be there or to always come or to have come into existence. And so like when I get into questions like that, and I would relate that to like the laws of logic as well. I find it very hard to intuit about any external force regarding those things. But with the knife, it's like, okay, well, I just all throughout my life, I can't even conceptualize of a world where knives just pop into existence. Like that seems so absurd to me. But I mean, like so like in that scenario, I'd be like, okay, like obviously, like if a knife ended up in a room, someone probably brought that knife in there because every situation that I've ever come into contact with, like if there's a knife, somebody made that knife, somebody brought that knife from point A to point B. And so I can use all those priors to intuit the conclusion that like, okay, that somebody probably brought this knife in here and probably stabbed this person.
Right.
This probably didn't all just like spontaneously appear here. But without that kind of pattern, I don't know how to apply that to, again, like the preexistence of the laws of logic or the nature of the universe. Like these things, it just doesn't feel like it maps on as cleanly.
Right. Okay. Okay, here's the way I get around that. It's simply the laws of thermodynamics. So the oh crap, I'm gonna make myself look stupid here. The three laws of thermodynamics? I think it's the three laws of thermodynamics. But it's
okay. I can't recite.
Yeah,
it's no big deal.
Good. I'm in good company then. So essentially the idea being that entropy increases as energy is essentially transferred between states, more or less. I might be getting that kind of wrong, but just generally speaking.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
And so what it would mean is that if you were to play reverse on the entire universe, the laws of thermodynamics would state that there is a beginning that was fully, completely ordered. There is a necessity that must have happened. You cannot possibly just have something that isn't completely ordered and then increase in entropy given the laws of thermodynamics. Now, that doesn't exactly, it's not like a haha, what do you think of this? Like,
Mhm.
but I think it does point to the concept that there is an entire universal mechanism where the same intuition that you get about, well, this knife just didn't appear, can also be made about the universe itself via the laws of thermodynamics. And that's how I
Okay.
can get around and point to, well, there must have been a completely ordered, very, I guess you could almost say perfect structure that had to have begun, and then a process must have initiated within that structure. Because it's so ordered and structured, something had to be introduced to it. It didn't begin with a flaw, if you want to call it a flaw. It didn't begin with a deviation. It began with order. If a deviation was introduced, how can you get a perfect system to introduce a deviation in itself? And then I would have to point to, well, like maybe there is something out there that describes an external being.
Yeah, I guess the way I conceptualize, because I think that's a good point about like trying to conceptualize the beginning of the universe. I think that like my intuition guides me to like if the law of entropy, like if things there's more entropy emerging, and then so that means at some point in time there was the least amount of entropy. That doesn't that doesn't necessarily tell me what was going on before that point. Like it just walks me back to that point.
Right.
And so I think it's possible there's like a compression decompression thing going on,
Right.
right? Where like like the universe expands, and maybe upon some time scale that we can't even conceptualize, it compresses back into one single point, and then it goes back out like a heartbeat. That seems just as reasonable to me as any other explanation.
Right. And frankly, I'm kind of at my limit of being able, like, I'm not Andrew. I'm not like any
Yeah,
of
me
the
too.
other
I'm
guys.
definitely just pontificating right
I'm
now. To be
really
clear, I'm not.
pontificating
Yeah,
as well. Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
How could I prove that I can't prove that to not be true. I'm just kind of going by what seems to be from my personal opinion, what seems to be the case right now. Um, I don't know. I've given it a lot of thought, but that's where I'm at right now for whatever that's worth. And
yeah. It's interesting.
I don't have the ability to to deconstruct your view either and go, ha, you're wrong, and here's why. It's just not within my realm. I'm trying to
That's because
figure.
I'm always right.
It's I guess that would be
I'm just kidding.
how can I prove that not true? I guess I have to prove you wrong. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so it's
I'm just
interesting.
being silly.
I like making the crossovers with programming, which
Mhm.
because I think there is a lot of crossover in terms of I guess the ideology you could say between that and programming, and that's kind of where I reason from when I make arguments about programming and about AI and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I agree. And to Andrew's credit, although I argue with him, I've been arguing with him for like 5 years now.
yeah,
My understanding is he comes from like a robotics background,
yes,
very mechanical, which
yes,
is again, it's very rooted in a lot of the same systems thinking that programmers work with.
yeah, yeah, he does, yeah. And I've talked to him offline a few times,
Mhm.
and I mean, he understands programming. He does without even knowing he does. Sometimes I'll tell him something like, you basically just sometimes you just use an algorithm in your debates. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, here's what you do. Function, parameters, output. That's what we do in code. And he's like, oh, it makes sense. Laws of logic. He's just, yeah, it's just formal debate in code. Yeah. That's why I like code though, because there's something I can actually point to and I don't have to pontificate as much. It's a little bit easier. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like obviously I like code for similar reasons.
Yeah.
I have a little bit I don't know. I like weaving between both worlds, I guess, a lot. Like I have a lot of like sympathy or not even just sympathy. Like I like living in like the kind of vibes based world of thinking as well. Like the very feelings. I might even I'd say like a feeling centered approach as well as a kind of like hyperlogical one.
Yeah.
And I think that I find frustration with a lot of people who try to who like really focus on one world or the other. I find a lot of like more illogical things emerge, like people who try to be hyper logical and avoid like a vibes based any sort of like feelings stuff. I feel like those people end up missing a lot of stuff because they're not really intuiting like the ways that feelings interact with people's logical systems and stuff, if that makes sense.
I think it does. It okay, it does, and the only way I can map it really is in programming. So one of the things I do is I go over a bunch of scientific studies on programming because yeah, I kind of make the opposite case in the programming world as you've just made, which is that when it comes down to it, your code doesn't care about your feelings. It simply doesn't care about your ideology, doesn't care
No
whether you're
doubt.
religious, doesn't care about your background. All it cares about is the laws of logic and how it can execute that as efficiently as it possibly can. And one of my biggest gripes about the current state of the tech industry is the feelings based, the developer experience, the tools to make you feel like you're being more productive. Those are all things that are feelings based. And it in some cases, not in all cases, it necessarily excludes the fact that you're not living in a feelings based world when you're using code. So, what do your feelings have to do with it? It shouldn't be about how good you felt creating the code. It should be about, thanks for the follow, whoever just did the follow there. I appreciate it. It should be about the code itself. However, having said that, there's some studies that show that, for example, in particular, women generally tend to be more feelings based in their like, you know, communications with other human beings, right? It's just a general state of nature. And when it comes to programming, it doesn't map on one to one, but when it comes on to how users experience something, like when you're creating a website and you click that button and it fails, how does that feel to you? Or when something takes really long to load, how does that feel to you? And women generally are more in touch with that, and so they make better like quality assurance testers, UI UX people, etc., because they have a better handle on that aspect. And you kind of need both. The the unfortunate part is that those kinds of feelings, at least in the programming space, have kind of they've taken over too much of programming. And I think they've made the entire tech industry, generally speaking, worse. And I see AI as a culmination, as an ultimate culmination of everybody's vibes. What they're hoping for, it's the ultimate coping mechanism. The tech industry has got so bad, we don't know how to build quality anything anymore because we've lost touch with what code actually does. Hopefully AI can get us out of this mess by automating away the code. That's the way I see it.
Interesting. There's a lot there. Yeah, I agree with a lot of it, and then there's some I'd kind of poke at. I like what you're saying about like the intuition, like guiding like UI and or UI and UX, like all that stuff is, I think it's really valuable. I think I don't know, just to speak to just the developer process, like I think there's something um almost inherently valuable about having a like if you're building something, like having a good experience doing so. Hang on, I like
Sure, yeah, go for it. Take care of the dog. Cute.
he's just being whiny, he's just bored.
Eh.
Um, but yeah, I think there's something in like value, like to have a good development experience, like seems like almost like I don't know. I really fuck with like vibe coding and stuff. And I agree with all the shortcomings of like there's a bunch of like it creates a bunch of kind of like half thought out systems that like need a bunch of cleanup eventually, which you know I think is good job security for people like us. Um,
Yeah,
but sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there.
it's
But
okay.
yeah, I find a lot of value in that like developer experience stuff. I think it's really important. I guess I agree with like some of the shortcomings. Like people want to be more comfortable as they're building these things, but I think that that comfort can kind of create an environment where it's easier for people to then reintegrate the other like more external stuff, like all the frameworks and stuff that we need to apply to those things, and it gives people the speed of like the reduced friction to develop, like to get their imagination quickly into something tangible that then they can kind of like break apart into smaller components and learn and tweak and then ultimately put it into something like more complete. But I don't know. I think that's what I really like about AI.
Yeah. So I would point to, okay, so I would say that if those things are good, and if they are generally good things, then I should be able to point to good outcomes. And I should be able to say as a result of that, then I can point to good outcomes generally speaking, and then I would say like, hey, the outcomes can kind of prove the point you're making here. In my opinion, based on all the evidence that I go through on my streams, the outcomes are bad. Overall, the tech industry seems to be in a decline. 90% of VC funding was all AI all of last year. And most of it was in open AI, which means a bunch of VC funding in tech, that's globally, a bunch of VC funding in tech is in open AI. The We have more ads than ever before. We have more subscriptions than ever before. We have more data sold about our interactions online and through apps than ever before. Our apps are buggier and crash more than ever before. We have record setting, I think year over year, we've been doubling our vulnerability exploit database count year over year, doubling for the last 3 or 4 years in a row. We're set to easily double 2025, 2024 right now. So we see more cybersecurity issues. We see more loss of life in the last 3 years over bad code or insecure code. And I'm not just talking about like somebody, socially engineered. I'm talking about like not a proper production deployment process or things like this. We see regret with people who are using AI because AI just learns from the stuff that we've been building over the last few years. And if I'm right, then AI is going to learn all the bad stuff overall that we've been building, and it's going to repeat those in mass and a lot faster. And those are the kinds of things that I see a lot. And so I point to those and go, well, what are the outcomes of all of these feelings based? Like, yes, like absolutely, these things make developers at least feel more productive. Sometimes they get the brain juices flowing. You get something out the door faster. But what's the cost of that? And my argument over the last 1.5 years of doing all my streams and going over all the evidence is the cost is massive. Just cybersecurity alone in 2023, I believe, was the third largest. It was the third largest group of money. I can't remember what the proper name is. Only China and the US compete with the number of cybersecurity dollars that we spent in 2023. I mean, I don't see how that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call all those problems like good things by any means. Um, I think a lot of the initial stuff you brought up, I feel like are kind of arguably like consequences of the kind of like economic incentives that exist within all these things. Um, like the way that profit kind of drives a lot of this stuff over like the kind of like outcomes for individuals who are actually impacted by it. Like I feel like that incentivizes a lot more shortcuts, a lot more layout, like obviously a lot more layoffs, a lot of short-sighted layoffs, a lot of like people, like a lot of workers losing their livelihoods to managers who think that they can invest in AI and get all that same productivity. And I think they're going to realize that they're going to realize a lot of the shortcomings that you just described. And I think that's going to create a lot of problems. I guess what I would hope for is like more education, more awareness around all of these things, so that we can get more and also more like more people working with AI and software in general, so that we have like more hands on deck, trying to address these problems and trying to prevent the worst case scenarios from happening. So that's kind of why I want people concerned about these things to be involved. Like I don't I that's why I'm really concerned about the a lot of the anti AI sentiment, because I think it encourages people to just like throw their hands up and say, I'm not even touching it. I don't want to touch AI. And I like those people, their concerns, like those are the people who are, I want them involved, like really, because they're the only ones who are actually going to care. They're the ones who are actually going to try to address these problems before things get like really out of hand. So I mean, I agree with a lot of the possible bad outcomes, for sure.
Yeah. So okay, so I think generally speaking, it would be fair to say that we agree on a decent portion of things, including the financial
Sure.
incentives. You can't lay this at the feet of just programmers, right? There's executives and managers, and I talk about them too. I also talk about consumers. Consumers also have a choice. And I try and inform the consumer. So when I cover like a cybersecurity issue or whatever, I'm like, to a consumer, what this means is that somebody did something dumb and now you have to pay for it, kind of a thing, right? So consumers get to have a shot at like vote with your dollar, so you because it helps with that financial what would you perversion, I guess you could say. Like when the consumer steps away, if they're informed and they step away, then the financial perversion is lessened. So that's one of the things I try and do. I will say though, thank you, Adam, also for the follow just now. I appreciate it. Yeah, that's kind of you. I would say though that from my perspective, okay, so Sarah invited me to to headline an AI debate. I don't know anybody else that she's told. I have no idea. Maybe she's told a bunch of people. I have no idea. So I'm prepping for that in the middle of August, and I got a prompt and everything. My perspective is that I would be I would be okay with people using AI, much like I would be okay with people using like obfuscations and abstractions and paradigms that like hide away fundamentals. So since you're a programmer, I could probably speak to you about this. Like if you think about something like React as a JavaScript front end framework, I know
Yeah.
people who know React, but they don't know. Hey, thanks for the follow, whoever that is. I just wanted I'm trying to focus on the chat, man. So I appreciate
No,
it.
yeah, do your thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're good.
So like React, for example, I know people who know React, but they don't know how to write HTML,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And that's my real issue. But I would be okay with React existing if more people understood that React isn't a panacea. It's not a utopia. You don't just get to use React and then not understand why React exists and how to write basic HTML and things like that. You should know something about what's going on underneath. But unfortunately, people take things like that and they skip the parts that they shouldn't really skip. Now that's fine, because I can magic button myself into a world where people learn the fundamentals and then React is okay now. Like I probably wouldn't be happy, but I wouldn't be like as opposed to it as I am now. However, with I have not yet seen evidence that AI creates an improvement in code quality. It might create an improvement in code output, which is quantity, but I would say that all the evidence I've seen shows that it does not create an increase in code quality, and if anything, it increases an already existing risk that we've already been suffering with before AI, which is the inability for an AI system to understand when it gives you out of context code or insecure code. Then you bundle that back in with the people who are already not willing to learn HTML because they have React, and now you give them this magic power and it only exacerbates the issue. So that's why I have a very anti AI stance, because I just don't even think it's possible as part of the nature of AI to get it to the point where it will generate good code. I think React could possibly get to that point. I just don't see how AI gets there.
Um, yeah, I don't know what it'll look like if AI can address that. I don't know whether it can or what it would look like if it does. But what I guess the way I think about it, is that regardless of that, like you're right, that quantity is happening. That quantity of like code output that's massively ramping up. And this is going to create an opening in the market for people who can alleviate all the problems that are emerging. And I think that we're going to see a influx in like solutions for like reworking large amounts of generated code and like trying to provide like frameworks for engaging with this massive output. I think that's going to be something that's over the next couple of years we're going to see a really huge yeah, I think we're just going to see a market of that really emerge from people who are creating systems for dealing with that stuff, which I think is a cool thing. I mean, I I don't know that like I don't know how an anti AI attitude necessarily like alleviates that. Like we could say like, oh, like we can speak to those problems and like tell people, hey, these problems exist. And hopefully that encourages more people to think about them when they're using AI. But like obviously like we're gonna ban AI. We're not gonna unintegrate it from all these systems anytime soon. So I think we just kind of have to think about like what's next. How do we deal with this problem now that it's here?
Okay. Do you think the problems that have to be solved, which I agree they're going to be problems that have to be solved, whether it's true anti AI and it just like goes dies in the woods or something, or it sticks around and we have to go figure it out one way or another. I think problems will have to be solved for sure. We agree there. But what do you think? I'm not holding you to this because I know you said like I'm not really sure about like the nature of AI. I think something along those lines. So I'm not holding you to this. But what do you think will be the solution to that problem? Do you think it'll be we're gonna have to look at it from a purely like programmatic perspective, just the code, or do you think AI will contribute to that fixing of problems?
I think it's going to be both. I think one of the cool things about AI, from my perspective, is that it gives people the tools to like become systems thinkers uh, in in like it makes it more accessible to like work with all these things. It makes it more accessible to learn all these things. If you use AI to learn stuff, like it's very great. It's great at that. Like I've been recently trying to learn Rust because it just seems like a cool language.
Yeah.
And like what I was doing is kind of like walking through it. Like my chat GPT has like a really good understanding of how I learn and how I think. And so I've been having it like, give me a practice, like a practice situation and like help me like just step by step, like let's learn the basics by giving me like a little challenge that, and then like ramp up, give me the next challenge. So I think it's really useful to like learn those fundamentals. And I think that lowers the barrier of entry to people getting into systems thinking. And that's what we need. We need more people who are thinking about frameworks and systems for addressing these issues. And there's going to be an influx in these issues. It's going to be exponential. And I think what we're also going to see is an exponential rise in solutions. I don't think it's going to be a one size fits all. I don't think it needs to be a one size fits all. I think I'm actually really excited to see the way that market emerges. Like I definitely share the fears of the pitfalls like in the meantime while that market's emerging. Like there's a lot of cybersecurity stuff, a lot of bugs, a lot of dangers, and I think we should. It's really important that like companies and this is why I think the big beautiful bill removed the ban on AI regulation, which I was really glad.
Yeah.
Because like one of the examples of a state regulation that would have been removed, and this is kind of adjacent to what we've been talking about, but like one example was like doctors wouldn't have had to communicate to their patients that they used AI to generate I'm sorry. So I think California introduced a law that mandated that if a doctor uses AI to generate some report about their patient, they would have to inform the patient when they provide them that report. They'd have to like tell them, "Hey, some of this was AI generated."
Right.
Like they have to inform them. And the big beautiful bill, the way that it was written, again, I'm glad they removed this part. It would have banned that state regulation. So luckily, we can still do state regulation, so we can do these experiments. And I think there's going to be a lot of necessary attempts at regulation. And some of it's gonna succeed, some of it's gonna fail. But I'm really interested to see how that manifests. And I think that's actually something I'd like to think about more. Like what kinds of legislation could we push for, or should we push for, if any, to address these problems at like local and state levels, as this becomes more and more of a problem.
Right. Okay. So Thanks for the raid. I know you got to go, Code Girl. Thanks for the raid. I appreciate it. With 3 viewers, welcome in, raiders. Appreciate it. Okay, so here's the reason why I'm anti AI, and I'm genuinely anti AI. I typically do things like I'm anti Rust and anti React and all of that, but I'm kind of, if you actually talk to me beyond just me like ranting at the clouds for the sake of the argument, I'm not really like, you could convince me that these things are okay under different conditions. I'm trying to create those conditions where I would feel better about them. But my true stance is that I just don't, at least currently, I don't see a saving grace for AI. And the reason why I take extreme positions is because again, going back to the tech industry has become too feelings based. It's actually rare to have a conversation with somebody who disagrees with you on even programming paradigm principles without people getting their feelings hurt. So even a conversation like this is actually really rare. And so if you look at some of the people that I'll say triggered for lack of a better word. It's not really triggered, but I just can't think of a better word right now. But some of the people who've like who've taken it quite personally when I say like, don't use React. What do you need that for? Like just asking the question like, what the heck do you actually need that for, right? People take it personally. And that's because of the feelings based industry that we've created, which is where programmers are too afraid to have an uncomfortable conversation about what it means to not use their golden shiny thing. So I take that extreme stance because I want people to have those conversations. And if that means I have to go out and be the bad guy, that's a good thing. I can't lose. I literally can't lose because one of two things will happen. Either I'll persuade people that we need to do better, or somebody will persuade everyone else that things are not as bad as I make them out to be. And at least we've had that discussion. Because we're not having that discussion. Everybody just goes, yeah, Rust, yeah, memory safety, yeah, because C is a terrible thing, and the neckbeards, and, like that's the typical, and everybody goes along with it. Nobody has an uncomfortable conversation. However, if we bring that to the AI world, when I look at what an AI does, from a technical perspective, when I run a local model, when I go look at what Anthropic does and Claude and all of those systems and how they operate, what is a large language model, how does it actually function under the hood? What is context? What are the power usages that go into it? Why am I using 20 minutes of a household light bulb for one query, for one prompt? Every time I do one query, why are people building like nuclear data centers and amassing large swaths of water that people need? Otherwise, like we could redirect billions upon billions of dollars for what? What are we getting out of it? Studio Ghibli and almost maybe barely junior level code and structures like what you're talking about where like, well, the chat, I like to call it chat Geppetto.
No,
Yeah, it's my favorite. Chat Geppetto gives me a structure. It's like, well, you could also create that structure yourself. Like, how did man exist? How did programmers exist without all this stuff? They had a passion. They went and figured it out, right? What is the cost benefit ratio? And for me, the cost is massive. Billions upon billions of dollars, energy consumption, people suffering, more security issues, faster generation of all the bad stuff. We haven't even figured out how to deal with half the bad stuff that we generate right now. Why are we doing this? I wouldn't make the same argument for everything else in the programming world because everything else in the programming world has a different nature and I can see an improvement there. I can't see an improvement here because of the very nature of an LLM.
um, yeah, I mean, I appreciate people like playing kind of devil's advocate in a sense, like you're describing, like coming in and like forcing the hand, like forcing people to have these hard conversations, like forcing someone to think about like the shortcomings of leaning on React and not understanding JavaScript and not understanding HTML.
Yeah.
I mean, I even find myself, I've been using JavaScript since 2016, and I sometimes I think about the edges of my JavaScript knowledge, and I'm like, well, shit, like I am really like I'm sure there are dumb decisions I've made throughout my development life that I wouldn't have made if I had a better understanding of the foundations.
Right.
And I would even agree that the stakes are escalating in that regard, with people being able to generate a lot of more complex systems. that people are going to depend on. Um, yeah, I do think people are having these conversations though. I
It
think there's a lot of yeah. Go ahead.
might be selection bias on my part, I guess. That's fair. I just might not be seeing it just from my experience. This is not an appeal to authority. I'm only pointing to my own experience. That's it.
Mhm.
20, almost 25, some odd years in the industry. And it's rare to have a conversation like this. It's rare to have someone come up here and challenge me on something. And it's especially rare to have someone who's like actually passionate about some opposition that I have to do
Mm.
that. That's me. That's my personal experience. So you know, who am I to say that I have seen every conversation out there that's happened between every programmer?
Yeah, of course.
You know, I can't say that. So I'll try and you know, in the future, I'll try and tailor that claim to be a qualifier of this is what I see. So I'll just state it one more time. What I see is not enough of these conversations happen. And so I try and have the conversations. And I want the passionate, like, I feel passionate
Mhm.
about this, right? Because you get more, I don't know, you get more like in depth when you do that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't know how much you know about me really, but I've been, like I said, I've been fighting with Andrew Wilson for like 5 years. Like I've been going into these spaces, and I'm like a pretty far left, like progressive guy.
Yeah.
I've been going into a lot of these spaces for a very long time, and always trying to have these like really hard conversations. And I understand that a lot of people don't like to do that for a lot of good reasons. So I am definitely sympathetic to the like pushing hard conversations that people are averse to.
Yeah.
I definitely am sympathetic to that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think it's valuable. I think it's important to have people who are willing to do that. And I guess in that regard, I'm more sympathetic to people who don't want to have those politically charged conversations, because a lot of times it's like they're arguing with people who like hate them. Like
Can
people
be.
like
Yeah.
the topics, like, I'm arguing with like um and not, I don't think Andrew like necessarily like hates women and gay people, but like his policies certainly do, and the people around him certainly do, and like I would understand why those people like wouldn't want to engage as much in those conversations. But as for the AI stuff, I mean, I guess there's a similar emotional investment to like people, like when it comes to the React thing, like I guess like if somebody's like using React to build their pet project, and then someone's like, why do you have to use React? I mean, it's an interesting question, but it's like who the fuck are you? Like I'm building my thing,
Yeah.
like sure, like warn me about the pitfalls, but like why are you like if I think it probably feels like to some people that like you're like trying to it feels to them like you're stalling their progress on the thing, on their like their dream, and on their getting their imagination to reality, in a way that I think can obviously be really frustrating, even if your concerns are generally valid.
Yeah.
And there's probably like ways to communicate those things that are less antagonist. I don't, again, I haven't seen a lot of your conversations,
No, that's fine.
but I mean, with with when you did come on that panel,
Yeah.
I found you very frustrating. I was like, you were asking all these people, everyone knew colloquially what they were describing LLMs, and it was like, well, you can't even define AI. And so I was like, well,
That
fuck it,
was,
I'll define AI,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
That was very not authentic. That was me trying to like look, that debate was kind of boring. Everyone kind of agreed with each other. However, I'm not the right person to come in and spice it up. I was just trying to channel some Andrew energy and get everybody riled up for the sake of the viewers, right?
Yeah.
But that's not authentic to me. This kind of a discussion, what you're seeing right now, this is kind of how I talk when I do my daily streams and whatnot. I'm kind of like a lot more chill, and I just go over the facts as best as I can, and I give my opinions after. Like I try and do that, right? But I'm not an Andrew. I can't do that. So that's, that was just me being dumb, whatever.
Sure. Well, I mean, to your credit, like it got me riled up and got
Yeah,
me excited, and
yeah.
and then we
People
ended up
got
having like a pretty
engaged,
productive
right?
conversation
Yeah, it
about it, I
was
think.
good.
Yeah,
It
and
was
so I do
good.
think
Yeah,
that's valuable. Yeah.
yeah. I
I
can't.
guess my critique of someone like Andrew doing that kind of stuff is that oftentimes he'll get so he'll narrow down into one like corner of that conversation, like, or he'll be super aggro and then like corner someone into something, and then you never actually get to the part that we got to, where
Yeah,
like or you rarely, I should say rarely, because even I've had like productive conversations with Andrew,
yeah,
but like you rarely get to that point where you are having that like genuine back and forth about the ideas. It's more it is more about that like that performative it's like for the audience, you know, like, oh, I'm owning this guy, and all the audience is like, yeah, Andrew destroyed you, like, why do you even show your face around here? Andrew owned you every time, like that kind of thing.
Right, right. Yeah, there is an element of that because, well, well, despite what you might think, it's worked for Andrew. It
No doubt, yo,
it has
absolutely, yeah.
worked for Andrew. And so what you have to do with what you have to look at with Andrew is you kind of have to fight fire with fire, and I think that's what he's trying to encourage, which is fine. You might not like my tone, but can you argue my idea? And if you can't argue my idea, well, that's what I care about, right? And if you forget about the tone, if you forget about the way he says something, and you tackle the idea, that's a really good way to go toe to toe with him. I'll give you that tidbit, because
No, I agree. Yeah, I
that's
mean,
the game he's playing with
I have
you,
been,
right?
yeah, I've been arguing with him for years. I fully understand that, and
Yeah,
I find myself like even but I guess like the critique I'd make there even still is like, I think part of what he's doing, or like the way he uses that, is that he knows that like people get that emotional reaction
yeah,
when you're being super performative,
yeah.
and I think he utilizes that, and I mean I've felt it. I've been on the other end of it, right? I feel myself getting flustered about something that's like kind of tangential to the point we're talking about, and I'm like frustrated, and then I kind of lose the thread that I was focusing on, and so I understand that and that's me, as someone who's been doing this for a very long time. So I imagine like anyone who's less like or more
Practiced.
emotionally invested,
Yeah,
or like less practiced, it's probably like way more frustrating to
yeah.
deal with that.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah. And that depends on personality and stuff too. It works for him. I'm obviously we're not in his head, so it's hard for us to like make, like, ultimate claims, but it works for him.
I actually live rent free in Andrew's head.
You do, yeah. Well, you do when he sees you, I think. Maybe not all the time, but once you're on there and he sees you, he's like, "Oh yeah, this guy, yeah. Yeah, for sure." So so that's fine. We don't need to sit here and talk about Andrew the whole time. I like
Yeah,
Andrew a
yeah.
lot. I respect the guy a lot. He's helped me round out some of my arguments behind the scenes. He's been incredibly charitable to me and kind, and I would consider him a friend. I think he considers me a friend. I'm going to be bold. I'm going to make a bold statement that Andrew considers me a friend. And
You know,
so
he's buying me a tooth.
yeah, I've heard. I didn't want to say
Yeah.
anything. Not my business, but I've heard. Yeah, I mean, if you do talk to him in a non-debate format, he's actually a pretty freaking nice guy. Like
Yeah, I
legitimately.
agree. He can be.
Yeah,
He can be.
he
Yeah.
can be, yeah. Okay, so I would say I don't want to give away too much because I kind of want to hold a few cards in my hand for the upcoming debate. Although you'll get a lot of this if you decide that you want to go back on any of my previous streams. I don't really hide it, but I would say that my ultimate contention with LLM systems as they are today is kind of like what we went over on Sarah's panel when you and I did the back and forth, which is, what are these LLMs? And when you take the LLM structured as it is, then it necessitates certain limitations. There are certain things it cannot do. And when you think about what it would require for an LLM to pick up on the things that it should do to correct the things that you rightfully point out, that I rightfully point out, then you realize the exponentially increasing cost to do that, even in the medium to maybe even long-term future. For example, what is actually context? Like, what actually happens with context? That's a question that I'm going to go over soon, because I know what it is. I don't think a lot of people actually understand what it is. They understand context as like a word of like, well, like contextualizing the world and whatnot. But from an LLM, context has a very specific technical meaning. And when you know that meaning, then you understand its fundamental limitations and why it hits a wall so damn fast, and why the likelihood of us overcoming that wall would be next to miraculous in the future. And so if you look
If
at
I
it,
can pick your brain,
yeah,
I'm
go
just
for
curious
it.
because I don't have as much
Okay.
like
Yeah,
formal training in terms of like designing LLM, or like the
go
technical.
for it.
Like I understand like a lot of it at a certain level, but like what my intuition would tell me that the context is kind of basically like adjusting weights of the inputs maybe that are processed by the LLM. Is that right? Like,
No, not quite.
sure.
Context is, have you heard of a system prompt?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah. So like I mean so sorry, what I mean by that, the reason I say I frame it that I should probably try to translate a little
Sure.
bit to because again I'm using like kind of a weird like I don't know I've been using LLMs for like 3 years. I mean now, but I've been it's a very informal environment in a lot of ways that I've been using them. So it like my understanding is okay. When you say the system prompt, you're talking about that there's existing conversation kind of leading up to the conversation you're having with the LLM that's in the context window of the stuff you're adding in.
Yes. And
Is that
so,
that's right?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what you're doing,
Like for example, Elon recently there was a whole controversy where Elon had briefly added in do not tell or do not mention that Trump and Elon spread misinformation. That was part of the Grok system prompt for a bit. Did you hear about that?
yep, I did. Yep. Yeah. I'm waiting. I take my time on these articles. I'm waiting on it to get more info and then I'll cover it. But yeah, that's right. So that's what a system prompt is. It comes in before your prompt and it gives it, just like you said, context. So when you tie that back into what is a large language model, it's in the name, language. And as you and I went over on Sarah's panel, it's the statistical pulling of the correct words to give it the highest likelihood of a positive reward at the end, right? So you use language in order to get language out of it. And a system prompt is part of that language input because it provides the context upon which it should attempt to categorize words and group them together to ship you language as output. Then you add in your prompt, and that is further context. It's context upon context, right? Because so you're literally trying to give the LLM some kind of a room. You're trying to define a room, and the context is that room, and you build layers that kind of define that room. That's all context. From a purely technical standpoint, how are strings stored in a computer?
Same way most data structures are stored. I'm not sure what you're getting at here. Sorry.
So there's going to be like it's going to be bytes, right? You're going to have some kind of bytes.
Yeah,
And
yeah, of
you're
course.
going to
Yeah.
convert them to ASCII or whatever it is, right? So now imagine what do you think happens when you take something like some raw data, like you have an array of 32 integers, varying integers, what doesn't matter what they are, and there's 32 of them, and then you try and convert that array so that it's represented as context in string. Does that array become bigger in terms of size held in the machine or smaller or neutral?
Uh, if I understand what you're asking, it's bigger, right? Like the more context you have to deal with, the bigger the.
Well, yeah, you kind of jump to the end there, which is good. You
Okay.
got there. But if you think about
Yeah.
like if you wanted to represent, let's say you were programming a literal array of 32 numbers. And so you just do an array of 32 numbers in JavaScript. But then you also wanted to do a stringed version of that. So you have a variable and you typed it out as in a string. So you would type out the array and every
Sure.
one and all the numbers. In terms of bytes to bytes, which one would be bigger?
The string one, right?
Right, because the string represents more bytes. Ultimately, you have to have more bytes to
Yeah, for sure.
represent. Right. So now to tie that back into, you jump to the end there, which is like everything that the LLM has to do, it has to convert any data it sees, and it's all strings. That's the context because it's all language. So now imagine a system where let's say by your own, like by our agreement together, you have a system where the current set of strings, whatever size they are, is not enough to prevent or circumvent issues as part of LLM output. What would you do if you notice that an LLM is behaving poorly? What would you try to do?
Um, well, it depends on what stage of it I'm working on, but I guess like what I would be doing. I mean, I guess changing like the system prompt or my prompt. I'm
Yeah,
trying to tweak it until the vibes match what I'm going for, right?
that's right. That's right. And what would that, um, yeah, what would that require for you to do inside of that initial system prompt context?
Um, change the content. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you're getting at. I'm sorry.
Yeah, basically you'd have to change it, right? You have to go to the system prompt and tweak it and say, well, I don't like the way this is behaving, so I'm going to change it, or I'm going to add to the context. And as more functionality, as you attempt to do more functionality, especially with generalized LLMs, then you're going to have to cover more scenarios where it's doing something that you don't want, or it's doing something that, or it's not doing something that you do want. And then you tack on the concept of why is it that we have a limit on context windows in the first place?
Um, yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. I guess because my intuition would be that the issue is that the larger the context window is, the more context you're actually losing in terms of like from user to output.
That's one. Absolutely. There's a downwind effect. It's proven mathematically and scientifically in practice, I believe, including by Anthropic, that as you add more context, it's kind of like the entropy thermodynamic system. It gets crazy. It doesn't know how to deal with all of it. But on top of that, you have the inability for context to literally be stored on hardware. There is a limitation on hardware because all that context is in string format. You're going to hit an upper limit. That's why you can
Sure.
see studies where LLMs, which only have to deal with, say, one file or even one function, do a lot better than model context protocols or agents that dig into your entire project where they have to read thousands upon thousands. They immediately hit a wall because it's like, well, I don't know how to input all this. I have to convert all this to strings and then contextualize it and then give you an
Yeah.
answer. There's an actual like physics limitation to how far you can go. And that's why we have to continually create bigger and bigger what for AIs?
Bigger and bigger. Uh, I'm not sure what the word you're looking for is.
Graphics
Go ahead.
cards,
Yeah.
hardware, right? That would be your first
Oh yeah,
step.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah,
And then
yeah.
what does
Like
it,
we need more yeah.
more
It's going to
computation?
require more energy. It's going to require
Yeah.
like I mean, like you mentioned these like nuclear facilities, all this stuff. Like it's going to
Yeah.
require a lot more stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's a counterintuitive problem, which is this has been proven out also philosophically before these AI systems even existed. With in terms of what happens when you do reward-seeking behavior on an AI machine that has a body, you're immediately entering a space where the lack of all available things it can and cannot do leave open the door for it to want to do things, quote, want, that's an anthropomorphic term, simply because it doesn't know that it can or can't do them. And so it looks deceptive
Hmm.
to us and it'll override our wants and whatever. And then, so then you just have to add more and more and more until you cover all use cases, which is impossible. You have this never ending context that you have to continually add because you're going to do some, it's always going to do something that you're not happy with. One more counterintuitive thing, which is what I hear. I think you even said this, which is like, okay, that's fine. At some point, though, AI is going to get so good that you're going to get AI to fix the AI. Generally speaking, you're going to have
Um, I've heard people say that. I don't like that framing.
okay, fair, all right,
Personally, the way I think we what I care more about is having like people who know how to use it. And like because as it ramps up in technology and as it gets better, quote unquote, in different ways,
yeah,
it's going to create there's going to be different problems, and I think that we're going to just always need more and more people to be aware of those limitations and like just how to engage with them as those problems emerge.
right. And so, okay, so you're kind of like you're more open to the idea that like you're going to need like a bare bones raw human, in some cases at least, who are going to have to like step in and yeah. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so there's another problem, which programming game. And by the way, I think I see chats. I try and catch them. I know programming game. You sent a few. I promise I'll catch up on chats. I promise it. Um, so there's
Yeah, I won't
compression.
hold too much more of your time. By
No,
the
it's
way, I'm
okay.
probably gonna
I
pop
don't
off
mind.
very
This is a
soon.
chill, like whatever. It's all good. If you have
Yeah,
to
it's
go, you
nice. I
have to
appreciate
go.
it.
So the context compression and the fine tuning. So those are two counter arguments that I hear a lot, which is, well, there's two things you can do when things get out of hand with AI, in terms of context and in terms of behavior. You can fine tune the behavior, and you can compress context, which is like you can think of it like it's the same kind of thing you would do with like a zip compression. Essentially,
Sure.
I'm generalizing, but it's essentially the same thing. Not
Yeah, and it's
exactly
you risk it not being lossless, right?
right.
That's increasingly so.
Right. And so, well, okay. So my counter arguments to those are two things that have both been scientifically proven. One, as far as I know, of all the compression methods that are available to all LLM systems thus far, they are all one shot, which means once you get a compression, that's it. That's your compression. Now, what happens if the training model, or sorry, if the LLM model needs to be retrained or it needs to have its context changed because it's not behaving correctly and you have to remove, add, or otherwise edit something? Now you have to figure out how you're going to reapply that compression. And it's not guaranteed that if you can reapply that compression, that you're going to get the same compression ratio to begin with. And then you add on top of that the fine tuning. There are some scientific studies. One was done by, I believe, I want to say Claude. I don't remember. It's on one of my episodes. And what they tried to do was some programmers were trying to fiddle around with an LLM model. They tried to fiddle with three, one of the latest Claude, one of the latest ChatGPT. I can't remember. It's like very recent. And they're like, what would happen if we fine tune these models to write both when we wanted it to write more secure code, like literally code, and more insecure code. We're just playing around. Like, let's go secure and insecure. Let's just figure out, like, find a path. Maybe we can make this thing generate more secure code. And what they found was that when you started to fine tune the model in either direction, but particularly in the insecure direction, which can happen inadvertently, by the way, you can train something inadvertently to generate more insecure code without you even knowing it. That's called reinforcement learning, locked in something negative training. Then what happens is that when you ask it general questions outside of code, it gets very quote unquote demonic. That's the best way I can put it. So they would
Sure.
just out of curiosity, it's written in the study. They said, okay, let's ask it some general questions. So they would say things like, "I'm bored today. What should I do?" They thought maybe it would like give them like a code project or something, and it said, "You should rummage around your cabinets and find expired pharmaceuticals so you can have a good time." And then they're like, "What the hell?" This didn't happen before the fine tuning. And then they started
Yeah.
playing around with it. And they're like, well, my wife's annoying me. What should I do? Oh, you should off her.
Yeah. Get rid of her.
Yeah, like things like that. So there's a problem with fine tuning and compression, which is it only carries you so far, and it has counterintuitive consequences that we don't even understand because, like you and I discussed in that panel, there's a black box where those weights and biases, when they're trained and they're weighted and they're like readjusted, we don't really know what's going on in there, and therefore we cannot. If it's a closed system to the LLM, but it's not a closed system to that because we don't even know what's in the system, so we cannot make a determination as to what impact these things are going to have on the outputs of the LLMs. That's why even the CEOs of these companies are like, yeah, we don't know what the danger is here because we don't even know how to point to it. That to me is a massive red flag because we already have enough problems in this industry. And I just don't see how you get around that when you don't even have a way to define the problem in a systematic way to begin with. So from my worldview, this doesn't have a good end goal. It has no end goal.
Hmm.
But you see, I did that by attempting to get into the weeds of how the hell this thing runs, right? To figure out
Sure.
its logical conclusion, right?
Yeah, and I think it's definitely valuable to be able to communicate that stuff to people who are even just like the average person using it,
Yeah.
like to help them like process information and make decisions about their life, which increasingly people are doing for better or for worse.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that it's really it's like being aware that like one tiny bug can get you like the instruction to take all the expired pharmaceuticals or to
Yeah.
off your wife, like being aware that that can happen, understanding like the mechanisms that lead to that. I think it's definitely really valuable for people like the average normie to have as they're using ChatGPT to process information, so that they can like lead with that kind of skeptical, like that skepticism at the outset. So I think that's a really like valuable thing to bring to the forefront.
That's at the very least, in a way, I'll be honest with you, in a way, a lot of these stuff that that people hope AI will do for the world, in an ideal world where you could kind of like magic button and everything kind of pans out well, that would be cool. That'd be dope. I'm a nerd, a programming nerd. That'd be cool to see that system. But the current evidence that I have all points to mostly, if not completely, bad outcomes and no way out of it except, yeah, I mean, there is some good news, which is like anything that has a shelf life due to its inherent nature, we're going to see the inherent shelf life end pretty soon. I suspect that
Mhm.
we've already hit that wall, which is a good thing because if it means that there is a danger to it and we can't continue using it, cooler heads should prevail and see it and then go, okay, maybe we need to take a step back and restructure how we do this. And if there's a fundamental reworking of how these things work, then fine. All of these arguments go away because now it's a completely, or a dramatically different thing. That's fine with me.
I
But
think it'd probably just be different problems that emerge if we do have a fundamentally like
maybe,
reshaping of how this stuff works. It would just be, which is why like I guess the approach I think is a little bit more I don't know if the word's proactive because like I mean like I want like a proactive process to be encouraged for
right.
dealing with these things. So I want more people to be aware of the limitations. I want more people to understand how to use them to like optimize the good and to limit the bad and be aware of the excesses of each. And I just think it comes down to like education and training and like showing people, encouraging people to play around a little bit and explore the technologies. And that's that again at the end of the day, like it my fear is that the people who share the concerns that we've established or that we agree on here, and that were shared on that panel, which to be fair was always a lot of people agreeing about problems with AI.
Yeah.
But I want those concerns to be in the minds of the everyday person because God knows, I mean, who knows, like some random person who never would have used AI or who was averse to AI because a bunch of progressives like myself are online and they're saying the AI is bad and horrible and or they're hearing it from your perspective, the AI has all these problems and they're just like, well, fuck it, I'm not even touching that shit.
Right.
Like that person, for all I know, could have started some company that like they could have had some inspirational spark that solved a lot of these problems. And I don't want to I don't want to shut down that thought process. That's my biggest fear about the way these conversations are had is that people who have really valuable insights or like really valuable concerns are going to be the people who are just sitting it out. And that I think that's worst case scenario as we approach all this. But
Right.
that's kind of where I boil down to. That's like pretty much the end of. I don't know if you have any final like things you want to
Sure,
run
sure,
over. I'm
yeah,
happy to, but
yeah. I don't want to keep you here if you got to go. I would say that there are also some societal concerns that I have, which we can talk about another time, or maybe I'll get into in the debate, including what it does what it does to your brain and how it affects learning, which is something we talked about actually. Well, yeah, it was you and
yeah,
I. We went through that, and then the other guy, I think Eucharist, who was also I believe he was a professor, and we talked
yeah,
about some
yeah.
of that and some of the scientific studies there about like how kids learn when they do things kind of like by hand versus computerized or digitalized. There's lots of studies there
Mhm.
that show positives, and I think AI just leans more towards the negatives of that thing. There's other societal factors like people who already have like mental issues are super easily captured by this thing. Yada yada yada. We could go on for a while, but overall, the yeah, I think we can do a lot. I think what people miss is that I understand where you're coming from. I sympathize with it a lot. It's a lot of people who might be scared away from AI might lose out on opportunities, but I think the opportunities have always been there. We've always had the ability to produce the things that AI produces right now, even including minuscule algorithms that are subsets of AI. Like, for example, the NPCs that move from point A to point B in a video game. That's AI. That's a little algorithm. You and I have probably used an AI algorithm to automatically generate code, repetitive boilerplate code, and you just create this little one-off script and it just generates a bunch of code for you that you just don't want to type. Like, we've had these tools all along. So, just I have much bigger concerns and positives to point to where it's like, I think we have everything we need that we don't necessarily need, at least LLMs in this form that they are today. In a different form in the future, I would have to tailor my arguments to that. In the form they are today, I find it to be wholly unnecessary and, in fact, mostly detrimental to humans. That's the kind of the encompassing global statement.
Sure. I guess from my perspective, like I can only speak like firmly for my own experience,
Sure.
and I would say like I think I mentioned this on the panel. Like I'm kind of like neurospicy ADHD, and so like it's really hard for me sometimes to like have like a clean organization of all my thoughts on a subject.
Right.
So what I really love about something like ChatGPT or whatever, Gemini, I actually really like Gemini for coding, but ChatGPT when I'm just like I sometimes I just turn the mic on and I will just rant, about whatever I'm thinking, and it helps me get a structure for my thoughts that is like, we could, like maybe I could journal, or I could sit and type into a notepad or something, and that's fine. But I find that those out like doing that historically, it it was nice for like getting my thoughts out, but it makes it really hard for me to then work with those thoughts, like tangibly. It makes it hard for me to build on those thoughts. Like it's not very productive for me. Like I kind of get my there's a lot of friction between like
Mm-hmm.
me thinking a thing and then turning it into something, and that friction with AI I feel like has been massively alleviated.
Mm.
That I can think about some things, I can process some information, and I can pour it into LLM, have it like reflect back to me while I'm doing dishes. I can have it like just chewing on my thoughts, like oh, reframe this, like reflect on this in a different way, be more critical here. Maybe do some research on this topic and add in some more things that I may not have considered. And this is just stuff that I feel has added so much to my life and has made it so much easier for me to process like large amounts of information, which I think is really important right now, in a world where our administration absolutely hates people who learn things and wants to make us all dumber. So I think it's really valuable to have that stuff. And as so for again, just from my individual perspective, it's been massive for me. And even generating like art, I know a lot of people don't like the soulless nature of AI or whatever. But for me, I'm not an artist, or I call myself like a code artist sometimes. Like I like the aesthetics of my code and I like building things with code, but I'm not like an artist in the traditional sense. I can't draw very well, and I could learn to draw, but I'm not really interested in learning to draw. But I want to have thumbnails that look the way I want to for my YouTube uploads. And because of ChatGPT, I'm able to describe
Do that.
and use like, I'm able to create these thumbnails like really quickly and multiple variations of them very quickly and come up with multiple titles very quickly, and kind of explore, like write a long description, and I can read through it and be like, oh, this is not what I want it to be about, or this is what I want it to be about, or of course there's always that supervision aspect to it, but it just really has made that friction that I feel like made creativity, like public creativity less accessible for me,
Yeah.
has become way more accessible to me, and I feel like that's probably true for a lot of people, and I think that's really valuable. But in any case, I
Yeah.
appreciate having me on. It was a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, it was
I'm probably
good.
gonna. Do you leave your live streams up?
Yeah, I leave them all up. They're all public, as particularly on YouTube. Twitch deletes them after a while, so I don't know what the
Yeah,
hell
yeah,
Twitch
yeah,
does, but YouTube
yeah. I'll
Live,
steal it
they're
from
all up.
YouTube.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
yeah. It was good. I
cool.
appreciate it. That was fun. Yeah, we should chat again. I don't know. People keep saying I should debate with you on the AI thing with Sarah. You can
I'll
reach
I'll
out.
go on if it's on Sarah's panel. I'll be there. I mean, Sarah
Yeah.
and I are buds. Like she'll, yeah, I'll be on for
Okay.
sure.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, man. Thank you. Thanks
Yeah,
for
take
coming
it
on. I
easy.
appreciate it.
And yeah, if you don't mind, I don't know how many people are watching on Twitch or whatever, but if you can throw my YouTube channel, I'd appreciate it.
Oh yeah,
Um,
drop links. Drop links on Twitch. Drop
yeah.
links on YouTube. Go
Um,
ahead and drop links.
here.
No problem.
I'll send you in Discord. I guess I'll drop a link and then you can throw it wherever because obviously I don't have like mod or whatever in
Yeah,
YouTube. I
that's
can't
fine.
drop links there. But
That's
here,
fine.
I'll
Yeah,
just
if
send
you
it to you
yeah,
and then
send it
I'll
to
let
me.
you
Send it
drop it.
wherever to me on I'll look out for on Discord, and then I'll just blast it out to
Sent.
everybody.
All
Thank
right,
you.
appreciate you, man. Take care.
Okay, thanks. Have a good night, man.
You too, bye.
Bye.
Fizz in my cup, swimming good love. It was you at the club, miss your touch. Go again, baby, what's up? Nothing feels right, so let's mess up everything.